All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely.
Awesome. This one hits pretty close to home for me, and I think for a lot of veterans, and probably even folks who aren't veterans as well. But we're going to be looking at why some veterans find themselves craving these super intense, almost unshakable bonds in relationships, and why losing those relationships can be so incredibly tough. It's something I've always kind of thought about, and recently saw this TED Talk about soldiers missing that brotherhood of war, and it really brought it all to the forefront again. So today we're diving deep into the why behind those powerful connections, how regular civilian life can sometimes feel so, I don't know, off in comparison, and how veterans, and all of us really, can learn to navigate this.
You picked a fascinating topic, and you're right, it does go way beyond just, missing your buddies. These bonds, I mean, they're forged in a crucible of shared experience, of facing life or death situations together, where trust isn't just a nice to have, it's literally a matter of survival.
And you can't just turn that off when you come home, right?
Yeah.
It's like you've been rewired to operate on this completely different level of connection.
Exactly. And the source material that we're looking at today actually uses the phrase moral injury to describe the psychological impact. When veterans come home to a society, that often feels at odds with the values they were trained to uphold.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you're constantly comparing everything to that baseline of, never leave a fallen comrade behind.
Right.
But then you step back into a world where looking out for number one seems to be the prevailing motto, and it's jarring.
Absolutely. And it creates a deep sense of dissonance, especially in Western cultures that tend to prioritize individual ambition over collective good. And so you end up with this situation where veterans are craving a depth of connection that many haven't experienced, and it can make forming and maintaining relationships incredibly challenging.
I've definitely felt that pull towards intense connections, and the source material actually uses this one quote that really stuck with me. It says, for many veterans, love isn't about finding someone who makes you happy, it's about finding someone you die for.
Right.
And that's heady stuff.
It is. And it highlights why replicating those military bonds in a civilian context can be so difficult.
Right.
If not impossible, the conditions just aren't the same.
Yeah.
There's no shared life or death struggle. There's no constant reliance on each other for survival.
So what does that mean for veterans trying to build meaningful relationships? Back home, are they destined to always feel a bit out of sync?
Not necessarily. It's important to remember that these are complex human experiences, not predetermined outcomes. But the source material does emphasize that it often requires a conscious shift in perspective.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but break that down for us a bit.
It starts with acknowledging the depth of what you're seeking, that primal need for connection, for loyalty, for that sense of belonging. That was so essential in the military. You're not just looking for someone to watch Netflix with, you're looking for a teammate, a confidant, someone who truly gets it.
Someone who understands that unspoken language, that shared sense of purpose.
Exactly. And from there, it's about finding ways to connect with that need without trying to perfectly replicate the past. Because as much as you might want to recreate that battlefield bond, you can't force it in a civilian setting.
So if trying to perfectly recreate those bonds is a recipe for disappointment, where do veterans go from there? How do they bridge that gap?
Well, the source material suggests looking at it as a spectrum, not in either situation. You might not find that same level of do-or-die connection in every relationship, and that's okay. But there are places and communities where you can tap into those values of shared struggle, mutual respect, and collective achievement.
Like those CrossFit gyms. Or MMA gyms that you mentioned in the outline.
Exactly. Those types of environments. While obviously not combat, offer a taste of that. Shared mission and respect earned through effort. It's not about the danger. It's about that meritocratic structure where everyone is striving for a common goal, pushing their limits and supporting each other along the way.
That's a really interesting point, and it speaks to this idea that maybe veterans aren't just looking for intense relationships, but rather they're looking for relationships that embody a certain set of values, a certain way of being in the world.
Precisely. It's about finding that resonance, that sense of alignment, even if the context is different. And the beautiful thing is that those values, trust, loyalty, dedication, perseverance, They're not limited to the military. They can be found in all sorts of communities and relationships if you know where to look.
So it's about finding those pockets of meaning, those spaces where those values are lived and breathed. But what about romantic relationships? How does this need for intense connection play out there?
That's where things get really interesting. And it's what we'll delve into next.
Yeah. Romantic relationships, those can be a real minefield for veterans, seeking these profound connections, because it's not just about finding someone you know you're attracted to or who shares your interests. It's about finding someone who can handle that intensity, that almost gravitational pull towards a certain kind of bond.
Yeah, it's like you're bringing this whole other dimension to the relationship, a depth of experience that a lot of civilians just haven't encountered.
Right.
And that can be both exhilarating and terrifying, can it? Absolutely. And the source material really drives this point home with a story about a veteran who compared dating to navigating a minefield.
Wow.
He said, you're constantly worried about triggering something, about saying the wrong thing, about revealing too much too soon.
Yeah, I can see how that would create a lot of anxiety, especially in those early stages of dating. It's like you're trying to figure out if this person can handle the weight of your experiences, the intensity of your emotions.
Exactly. And that's why communication is so crucial.
Yeah.
The source material emphasizes the importance of being upfront about your needs, about where those needs come from, about what you're looking for in a relationship.
But wouldn't that scare some people off? I mean, not everyone's equipped to handle that kind of intensity, the level of emotional depth.
That's true. And the source material acknowledges that it's a delicate balance. It's not about overwhelming someone with your past or expecting them to perfectly understand what you've been through. It's about finding someone who's willing to listen, to learn, and to meet you where you are.
Someone who's willing to embark on that journey with you, even if they don't have the same map.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that requires a certain level of emotional maturity, a willingness to step outside of their comfort zone and embrace something different.
So it's not just about veterans adapting to civilian life, it's also about finding partners who are willing to adapt to them, to meet them halfway.
Exactly. And the source material highlights that this can actually be a really beautiful thing.
Okay.
Because when you find someone who can truly connect with you on that level, who can understand and appreciate the depth of your experiences, it creates a bond that's incredibly strong and resilient.
It's like you found someone who can not only weather the storms, but who can actually thrive in that intensity.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the source material suggests that these relationships can actually be more fulfilling, more meaningful, because they're built on this foundation of shared values, mutual respect, and a deep understanding of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities.
So it's not about replicating those military bonds exactly. It's about finding new ways to express those same values, that same depth of connection in a different context.
Exactly. And that requires a willingness to let go of certain expectations, to embrace the unknown. And to trust that the right person will meet you where you are.
It's like you're saying, this is who I am, this is where I've been, and if you're willing to come along for the ride, it's going to be an incredible adventure.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the transformative power of these relationships. Because when you find someone who can truly see you, who can hold space for your complexity, it allows you to heal, to grow, and to become the best version of yourself.
It's like you're finally able to exhale, to let go of that armor you've been carrying for so long, and to just be.
Exactly, and that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
But what about when those relationships end? Because as much as we might want them to last forever, sometimes life throws us curveballs.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. We've talked about the intensity of these connections, but what happens when that intensity is suddenly gone? When that person who understood you on such a deep level is no longer there.
That's where things can get really tricky.
Yeah.
Because for veterans, especially those who've experienced combat trauma, the loss of a relationship can trigger a whole cascade of emotions. It's not just heartbreak, it's a resurgence of grief, a sense of abandonment, a re-experiencing of that loss of brotherhood that can be incredibly disorienting.
That's like the ground beneath you has shifted and you're not sure how to stand up straight anymore.
Exactly. And, and the source material talks about how this can often lead to a sense of isolation, a feeling of being fundamentally different
Right.
from those around you.
So how do you even begin to process that kind of loss, especially when it feels like so much more than just a breakup?
That's where professional help can be invaluable. A therapist who specializes in working with veterans
Right.
can provide a safe space to process those emotions, to understand the triggers,
Yeah.
and to develop coping mechanisms for navigating those difficult moments.
So it's not about trying to fix the problem or make the pain go away. It's about learning how to live with it, how to integrate those experiences into your life without letting them define you.
Exactly. And the source material also highlights the importance of self-care, of finding healthy outlets for those intense emotions.
Right.
Whether it's through exercise, creative expression, spending time in nature,
Yeah.
or connecting with other veterans who understand what you're going through.
Right.
Finding ways to nurture your own well-being is essential for healing and growth.
It's like rebuilding that foundation, that sense of inner strength and resilience that allows you to weather the storms and keep moving forward.
Right.
But what about those who haven't served in the military?
Right.
How can they support veterans who are struggling with these intense connections and losses?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll explore in depth in the final part of this deep dive.
Yeah, so we've talked about, the challenges that veterans face when it comes to relationships, but
Right. What about those of us on the other side?
yeah.
What can we do to better understand and support our loved ones who've served?
I think it all starts with recognizing that you might not ever fully grasp the depth of what they've been through.
Right.
And that's okay. You don't need to have experienced combat yourself to be a source of strength and comfort.
That makes sense. It's like trying to understand what it's like to walk on the moon. You can read about it,
Right.
watch videos, even talk to astronauts, but you'll never truly know until you've been there yourself.
Exactly. And that's where humility comes in.
The source material emphasizes the importance of approaching these conversations with a genuine desire to listen and learn,
Okay.
not to fix or explain away.
So it's not about offering solutions or trying to relate it back to our own experiences,
Right.
but rather creating that safe space for them to share their truth, however raw or messy it might be.
Precisely. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply validate their emotions.
Okay.
Let them know that it's okay to feel what they're feeling, whether it's anger, sadness, grief, or even numbness.
Instead of trying to cheer them up or tell them to look on the bright side,
Right.
we should just meet them where they are and acknowledge the weight of what they're carrying.
Exactly. And avoid comparing their experiences to your own, even if you've been through something difficult yourself. Because as the source material points out, the context of military service is so unique,
Right.
so charged, that it creates a whole different set of emotional triggers.
So how can we tell the difference between being supportive and accidentally stepping over that line? Are there any specific phrases or actions we should avoid?
Yeah, the source material suggests staying away from anything that minimizes their experience or suggests they should just get over it.
Okay.
So avoid phrases like, but that was so long ago, or everyone goes through tough times.
Yeah, I can see how those kinds of statements would feel dismissive, like we're not taking their pain seriously.
Exactly. And instead of offering unsolicited advice, focus on simply listening with empathy.
Oh.
Ask open-ended questions like, what was that like for you? Or how are you feeling about that now?
So it's about showing genuine curiosity and allowing them to lead the conversation
Right.
rather than trying to steer it in a certain direction.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to acknowledge your own limitations. It's okay to say, I don't know what that was like for you, but I'm here to listen and support you however I can.
It's about being present, being honest, and being willing to hold space for their pain without trying to fix it.
Exactly. And one of the most important things you can do is encourage them to seek professional help if they're struggling.
Yeah, sometimes we can be so quick to jump in and try to solve problems ourselves.
Right.
But in this case, it's crucial to recognize when professional guidance is needed.
Absolutely. And the source material actually recommends specific types of therapy
Okay.
that have been proven effective for veterans dealing with relationship issues and trauma, such as cognitive processing therapy and prolonged exposure therapy.
So it's not just about going to any therapist, it's about finding someone who specializes in these specific challenges.
Exactly. And that's where resources like the Veterans Administration or veteran-specific support organizations can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah?
They can connect veterans with qualified mental health professionals who understand their unique needs.
That's such valuable information.
Hmm.
It's one thing to say, get help, but it's another thing entirely to know where to turn, who to trust.
Absolutely. And remember, seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Hmm.
It takes courage to face those difficult emotions. And it's a testament to their resilience and their commitment to living a full and meaningful life.
It's like saying, I'm not giving up on myself. I'm willing to do the work, to invest in my own healing, so I can show up more fully for myself and for those I love.
That's a powerful way to put it. And I think it speaks to the heart of what we've been exploring in this deep dive. Because ultimately, it's not just about veterans finding their place in the civilian world.
Right.
It's about all of us creating a world that's more welcoming, more understanding, and more supportive
Right.
of their unique experiences and needs.
It's about bridging that gap between the military and civilian world so that those who've served feel seen, heard, and valued for the incredible sacrifices they've made.
Exactly. And it starts with empathy,
Yeah.
with a willingness to listen, to learn, and to step outside our own comfort zones,
Yeah.
to create a space where those extraordinary connections can truly flourish.
This has been such an insightful deep dive, and I hope it's given all of us, veterans, loved ones, and everyone in between,
Right.
a new perspective on these extraordinary connections.
Remember, these bonds are forged in fire, and they hold a power that can transform not only individual lives, but our communities as well.
So let's continue to learn from each other, support each other, and strive to create a world where those who've served feel a deep sense of belonging, connection, and purpose.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking those extraordinary connections, keep listening to each other's stories, and keep building bridges of understanding and empathy.